The Rise of Skywalker is not good. It's not a horrible movie all around necessarily, but what's good is massively overshadowed by the bad that is interwoven into the story. The writer, producers, director, and editor have spent so much time trying to shift blame or explain away problems, it's pretty obvious they know they didn't do very well. It's ultimately a disappointing and dissatisfying end to both the trilogy and the supposed Skywalker saga. But to be fair, I'll mention what I liked. I liked Lando. Yeah, he should have been in the last two movies, and yes, he should have been in this one more, but he was perfect, and Billy D. Williams was able to bring warmth and class to the role. I liked the settings. Exegol was creepy and new, Pasaana was familiar, sure, but the Alien Festival was enough to make it unique. Kajimi managed to avoid being a Nar Shaddaa or a Coruscant clone by being more old European city, and Kef Bir is pretty cool too. I like Jannah, and her scene with Finn where they connect over being former child soldiers is really good. I liked Anthony Daniels and Ian McDiarmid's performances, even if I don't care for the plot that their characters got. I liked Mark Hamill's character, the other one, and I really liked Swotomo's performance as Chewbacca, and his mourning of Leia's death was one of the best parts of the trilogy, if not the whole saga. Just really good acting. And you know what? I also liked a character that, given the last two movies, I was not expecting to like. I really liked Dio. The abused dog angle that Abrams went for worked really well. And those are the 7 things I liked over the 2-hour, 21-minute film. I'm sure that's a bit unfair, but I'm not paying to see the movie again to find even more small joys. But things I disliked? Oh boy, how do I even begin? Reintroducing Palpatine was the worst way to include a bad guy. He's never so much as been hinted to be playing things in TFA and TLJ, and his reappearance is never explained. What's to say he died this time? Or as he wanted Rey to kill him, what's to say he didn't possess Rey? Oh, and Rey? Absolutely terrible. No, not because she fights well or has impressive force abilities. People pick the worst reasons to dislike things, but because her selfishness and pride are never addressed. She hides the fact that she's talking to Finn's abuser from him, just so she doesn't have to have an uncomfortable conversation. She's willing to sacrifice the entire galaxy because she feels like she's falling to the dark side. I guess because she stabbed a fascist boy that already tried to kill her friend, did kill both of her mentors, and slaughtered countless other innocent lives. But she has no problem killing slave soldiers. And her fears of becoming evil are because her grandfather that she never met was? Evil isn't heritable. Luke wasn't afraid of turning to the dark side because he was Anakin's son. He didn't even know that when he first feared turning evil. It was because he had rage, impatience, resorted to violence when he didn't need to do so. Those are problems that he has in Empire Strikes Back, and A New Hope to a lesser extent. But by Return of the Jedi, he's mostly gotten over those, become wiser and more patient, working with stalling tactics and conversation when possible. With Rey, she goes from being afraid she'll magically turn into her grandpa to not that, I guess, because she's possessed by all of the Jedi. Nice to hear Freddie Prinze Jr. again, though. Poe is made into a drug smuggler. Like, seriously? Did they throw a dart at a board of Latino stereotypes? And they also throw in a love interest for him just so that we know he's not gay. Everybody meets Space Sharon Carter. At least Poe is in this movie, as Rose went from co-protagonist to background character, pretty much interchangeable with any other rebel. They pretend that they're going to kill both 3PO and Chewbacca, but since we know that they're going to kill Leia and Palpatine, this doesn't even come close to working. Palpatine, by the way, looks like that scene from Phineas and Ferb where Perry the Platypus is in a dress suspended by Doofenshmirtz. Actually, you know what? Now that I'm saying it out loud, that might be a positive thing. Of course, none of that feels as egregious as how Kylo Ren's arc went. Irredeemable fascist serial killer 1 minute, then his mom says his name, and ta-da. Okay, whatever. Someone clearly has a favorite parent. Darth Vader's redemption, if you can call it that, wasn't about him becoming good for goodness' sake out of nowhere. It starts with him wanting security for his son, a noble concept in a vacuum that would be brought about only by great evil. This works so well, especially with the prequels, because we see Anakin's evil has always been attached to putting the safety of his family over the lives of others. So, when his evil breaks, it's because his family is going to be killed by that evil. Again. And he can't let that happen. When he does kill the Emperor, he realizes that, yes, there was good inside of him all along. Not that he was good the whole time, or that he was actually blameless, but that he was able to stop the pain that he had spent decades supporting. For Kylo, the motivation is... Wait, is it that he wasn't really evil? Like, if we ignore his acts of genocide, and the other genocide, and the other genocide, and all the non-genocide murder, and the fascism, and the torture, and the slavery. And you know what, now that I'm saying all of that, it doesn't sound like he's good after all. Oh, unless the motivation was to kiss Rey, in which case, honestly, Finn, you dodged a huge bullet there. Rey really proved herself to be the biggest dummy. It's also not a great message for girls. That man that calls you nothing, that hurts your friends, that lies to you and makes you cry, if you give him a chance, and then another chance, one day maybe he might magically be good. Well, as long as his mom can fix him. Let's not expect men to do any work on themselves, right? But, you know, in terms of being a dissatisfying Star Wars movie, I really don't feel like this ruins Star Wars, because for me, Star Wars was a 6-movie saga that ended with Return of the Jedi, which happens to be my favorite Star Wars film. I had a good end for Vader that didn't actually say he was a good guy, but that he was able to do one final good thing. I had an ending where Luke sacrificed himself to save his friends rather than running away from the problem. I had an ending where all of the main characters played important roles, and the kiss at the end was set up throughout the trilogy. But what I didn't have, that I didn't get in The Rise of Skywalker either, is an ending for Finn. Finn, without a doubt, is the most interesting of the new Star Wars characters. Rey is just centrist Luke. Poe is just Latino stereotype Han. Kylo is just privileged Anakin. But Finn, now there's a good character. Child soldier, unable in good conscience to carry out orders to murder innocent people. Nobody fits that role in the previous Star Wars movies. Molded from birth to be evil, but striving instead to be good, as the only original concept in a trilogy filled with borrowed ideas, Finn stands shining. And man, is his character treated horribly. It starts in The Force Awakens. Some fans will say it starts in The Last Jedi, and it definitely gets really, really bad there, but The Force Awakens lays the groundwork. Ignoring the horribly tired and racist trope of black man gets hurt, played for laughs, Finn is, for the most part, treated with respect in this movie. He is heroic but complex. He wants self-preservation at Takodana, but mind you, he thinks he's gotten BB-8 to the Resistance, which is more than was expected of him. People say he's cowardly, but he's already done more than anyone would be expected to do. And despite what everybody says, what drives him to the Resistance is not Rey getting abducted by Fascist Boy, but instead the firing of the Starkiller base. That sends him back to Han. That convinced him to fight the First Order. Yes, he wanted to save Rey too, but it's ultimately the firing of a weapon that he didn't know was ready to be fired that drives him to stand up once more for good, just as he did for Poe and Rey, when they were strangers, just as he did for the villagers on Jakku. Unfortunately, The Force Awakens ends with Finn being brutalized and Rey saving him. By itself, this wouldn't be a deal-breaker. Yes, Disney insinuated with their advertising that Finn was going to be the Jedi, but as this is only the first movie, it would really depend on what happened next that would determine whether Finn was treated as well as his concept deserved. And you know what happened next. The Last Jedi is terrible for Finn. I've talked about how his pain is played for laughs, while White Pain is played as serious and somber. I've talked about how his plans are all destined to fail so the white characters can save him. And Mando and I have talked about how Finn's story about coming from nowhere was stolen and given to Rey. But I haven't really talked about just how much Finn's story itself was destroyed. The concept, as even the staunchest TLJ defenders would argue, is that Finn needs to learn how not to be selfish, how not to be a coward. Some TLJ critics would argue that he already arrived at this point at the end of TFA, but he didn't. He started TFA at that point. Refusing to participate in the massacre at Tonal, Finn already put the lives of others before his own. We know what happens to traitors in the First Order, and certainly Finn knew this as well, but still chose to put the worth of life over his own self-preservation. Now, Finn does learn a lesson in TFA, and that's to take pride in himself. His running away wasn't cowardice, he wanted the Resistance to win, but he doubted that he himself stood a chance. But when he succeeds in fighting off the First Order, getting Han and Chewie inside Starkiller Base, and taking down one of his abusers, he realizes just how confident he can be in his ability to help others, which is part of why it's so disappointing that he loses to Kylo Ren and never gets to fight him again. And The Last Jedi ignores all of that and says he's a selfish coward. He wants to run away, even though he's under no obligation to stay with the Resistance. He has to be told that child slavery is bad, even though he, not Rose, was a child slave. And after having a moral he already knew literally beaten into him, When he tries to sacrifice himself to save others, he's told that he's wrong to do that, because now he's trying to destroy things, not protect them. If Holdo sacrifices herself, it's heroic. If Luke sacrifices himself, it's heroic. If Finn sacrifices himself, he's a hateful man with no love. He literally cannot win in this movie. And then, Rise of Skywalker. I was vocal in my distrust of Abrams. I knew we wouldn't get Finn as a lead, but even the pessimist that I am thought we would at least get a Finn important to the plot. But no, Finn is ultimately given 3 points where he contributes to the story. And they're pretty good, actually. Finn connecting with Jannah is great, as I said, and it helps explain how the Resistance gets a decent ground force. He's the only one of the trio with enough empathy to connect with Dio, which is what allows them to find out about the need of the signal tower. Finn is also the one who, with Jannah, destroys the Steadfast, which is treated as less significant than the destruction of either Death Star, the Supremacy, the Lucrehulk, and the Starkiller base. I hate to do too many comparisons, but without Lando, Return of the Jedi simply wouldn't happen. He's the one that destroys the second Death Star, the only super weapon in play. In The Rise of Skywalker, Finn destroys 1, or maybe 2 if you count Collateral's, super weapons, while all of the other Star Destroyers are just destroyed in the incomprehensible dogfight. And for the rest of the movie, Finn is either helping others come to realizations about themselves, being the less effective of a group of fighters, or screaming out for or after Rey. Finn went from a strong character established in his own right that admittedly deeply cared for his friends and his cause, to a cowardly character whose care for his friends was placed before his appreciation of all life that truly defined who he was, to eventually a bland character that was just an extension of Rey. This is why I find the concept of the JJ Cut ridiculous. There's supposedly about 20 minutes left on the floor that could feasibly fit in with what we got. No way is 20 minutes enough to give Finn an arc or a purpose, or excuse his sidekick status in the rest of the movie. Would the JJ Cut be better? Probably, yes. Would it fix what was done to Finn? Only if it was a completely different movie from the start to the finish. Abrams wasn't concerned with giving us an ensemble movie, and The Force Awakens remains the only Star Wars film that even comes close to delivering on the amazing concept that Finn is. Needless to say, this doesn't happen to white characters. Imagine if Captain America spent all of Endgame calling after Iron Man, and was ultimately just a bit player outside of 3 scenes. White men and women were, on average, vehement from the beginning in their lack of interest in Finn, who, despite being more interesting than any of the other new characters, was black and had dark skin. Disney, the cowards that they are, listened to these fans and have admitted to giving them what they wanted with regards to fan service like Reylo, not what they thought would make a good story. More care was given to the characters that were motivated by vague evil than to the only original idea that they had. Of course, though, Finn's story isn't done, or at least it doesn't need to be. Characters in Star Wars can be underutilized, underappreciated, or underexplored in the movie, only to become deep, complex, amazing characters in media outside. So, given that the groundwork is already laid, I hope that one day we get an amazing Finn story. Be it a book, a cartoon series, a Disney Plus live-action series, a game, whatever. Disney has a good thing here, an original character, and they should use him. And Disney, if you need some help on that one, as you certainly seem to, I have some ideas. You know how to contact me. Before closing, this video is, of course, about Finn's character throughout the movies. For a more in-depth look into the way that the fandom at large reacted to Finn, and how they took their anti-blackness out on John Boyega in real life, please check out the articles by Stitch at Stitch's Media Mix that I have linked in the description below. For an analysis on how the marketing of these movies changed over time with regards to Finn, please check out the article written by my friend Mando at the SW Shadow Council, also linked below. Thank you for listening.